I've made no secret of my favourite watch brand on this channel. In fact, the second video I ever made was me discussing them in detail. I'm saying that now because I'll make no apologies for the unconscious bias that will inevitably rear its head from time to time throughout the video. I can't hide it, I'm a Christopher Ward fan, so I just wanted to lay my cards on the table before we start. The specific model I'll be focusing on in this video is something that I've had my eye on since it first launched towards the end of 2023. You'll know what that watch is already from the thumbnail, so with all that said, let's get into the video. The Celeste is part of the C63 Celest range. These are styled as go anywhere, do anything, or Garda watches. If you've not heard that terminology before, it's used to describe watches that are designed to be worn in almost any situation. They are not specialist pieces, instead they are robust, durable and designed to be easily dressed up for formal events and dressed down for basic everyday activities like going to the gym as well. The range itself is broad, incorporating base models and GMTs between 36 and 41mm in diameter. The Celeste stands out from the rest of the range as it has a gemstone dial made up of deep blue aventurine, which resembles the night sky after which the model is named. Aventurine is a type of quartz that has a shimmering appearance as the stone is littered with inclusions of other minerals. This can happen through a naturally occurring process known appropriately as aventurescence, but it is also possible to artificially manufacture the gemstone by mixing copper oxide particles into glass, a process that was developed around Venice in the 17th century. This can get confusing because both materials, while different, are generally referred to under the same moniker. This leaves the debate open as to whether or not this can truly be considered a gemstone dial, but if I go any further into this, the video will have become a science lesson. At any rate, the dial of the Celeste is the manufactured glass and copper oxide variety, and the reason I wanted to draw attention to the material used in the dial is that not all aventurine is made equally. I've owned a few other models from other brands that have aventurine dials, and none have had the same luster and sparkle as the Celeste. The thing about aventurine is that if you look at it up close in advertising, you might be put off thinking that it's a very flashy, look at me, attention-grabbing material. Let's be blunt here, sparkly is not usually a word that you would see used to advertise a product designed to appeal to an adult audience. I want to reassure you though, and I hope that my footage does help to convey this, most of the time the dial on the Celeste, from a distance, just looks like a deep blue hue. Actually, the experience with aventurine is quite a personal one. It's a pleasure to move around under the light as you check or set the time, but it is nowhere near as flashy as you might think from a distance. If you followed the channel at all recently, you'll have seen that I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to science fiction films and just space exploration in general. And looking at that starry night sky dial does instill a little of that same sense of wonder as to what's out there in me. It's a nice slice of escapism on wrist when you do check the time. If you're along the same wavelength as me with this, but want something even more space themed, I would wholeheartedly recommend looking towards the C1 Moon Phase collection. While still a Garda piece, that aventurine dial does make the Celeste the dressiest model in the Sealander range, and that is further supported by the 36mm size. That does two things for the model. Dress watches are often sized down anyway, so it makes the watch easy to wear at formal events or with a suit for work. It also means that the model is effectively unisex, and for me personally, as someone who simply prefers smaller watches, I think 36mm is about as good as it gets. But I will acknowledge that this is not a watch for those with larger wrists. Before we get into the rest of the specification sheet, let's talk about price. In my opinion, the Celeste offers excellent value when held against other manufacturers offering Swiss-made on the dial, particularly given the heavy rate of inflation most economies have faced since 2020. There are 3 variants of this watch listed on the Christopher Ward website, one on an Italian leather strap, one on the 3-link beta bracelet, and one on the 5-link consort bracelet you've seen in this video. It's actually very difficult to comment on accurate prices at the moment, given the current fluctuations going on for importing or exporting anything at the time I'm releasing the video, but the watch should be available just under the $1,000 mark. In terms of the second-hand market, I'll be honest, they don't come up very often. I did find some records of them trading hands between the $700 and $800 value, but there weren't any listed on Chrono24 or eBay while I was scripting this video. Back to the nuts and bolts of the specification, the watch is powered by a Sellita SW200-1 automatic movement, which is standard across most Christopher Ward pieces. It is a smooth 26 jewel movement with a built-in anti-shock system, 38-hour power reserve, and an exhibition case back to show it off. The custom rotor is a really nice touch on these pieces. Having that exhibition case back does increase the thickness slightly. This comes in at 11.4mm, so it's not razor thin, but it's not exactly chunky either. Only the hour and minute hand are loomed, which is admittedly less than you'd get with a lot of other models, but adding loom elsewhere would spoil the overall aesthetic. What you do get is extremely bright though, as it's grade X1 BL C1 light blue superluminova. The lug-to-lug of the watch is very compact, coming in under 43mm, and on the consort bracelet it weighs in just below 150 grams, with the watch itself weighing just over 50. One of the main focuses of Christopher Ward as a brand is to be a disruptive force in the Swiss watchmaking industry. Traditionally, this has always involved offering high quality finishing, solid quality control, and excellent value for money across a range of what I would call standard models: divers, chronographs, sports watches, and so on. The thing is, calling yourself a disruptor to the watchmaking industry is something that you'll hear out of almost every startup brand, regardless of their credibility. This is shortly followed up by a discussion in their advertising about how much cheaper it is to sell directly to the customer, cutting out overheads, middlemen, and so on. I'm not saying there isn't a crumb of truth in that, but having been to the Kuo store in Kyoto at the end of last year, I think the reality is that most startups simply cannot afford a physical store, and it was such a nice experience to get hands-on with all the pieces that it's pretty hard to argue that it isn't just a far better shopping experience. The big difference with Christopher Ward is they aren't just talking the talk, they are actually having an impact on the perception of the industry and how much it charges for horology. Not only that, but they do now have showrooms in the UK and US. Their aim over the past few years, from the outside looking in, seems to be to target watch complications, where having Swiss made on the dial, plus the complexity of the associated movement, has always equated to a gut-wrenching price tag. We've seen that development with their moon phase offerings, the 12X, the Bel Canto, and just this week with the reveal of the C12 Loco with its open balance wheel. All of these models are deeply impressive and offer incredible value for money compared to other Swiss manufacturers. In this way, they stay true to the ethos of providing value for money. The issue is that, while cheap by comparison, these are not cheap watches, and this can be galling for long-term fans of the brand who simply cannot afford to keep up with the trajectory of their flagship models. And for clarity, I would wholeheartedly include myself in that category, much as I would love to own any of the aforementioned models. That is one of the reasons I'm so fond of the Celeste, in fact. It's a watch that still manages to make me feel special without being out of the question financially. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that this video is not a part of my Keep or Sell series. There is a very simple reason for that. This is not my watch. To be transparent, I work full-time and this is my hobby. I try to make the best content I can, but I am unashamedly clueless when it comes to running a YouTube channel professionally. I have a contact email, but I'm not in the habit of ever checking it. Last month, I did get around to going through my correspondence and found an email from Christopher Ward inviting me to a launch event. I was genuinely quite excited about that, but when I read the email, I found that it had been sent weeks ago and the date of the event had already passed. I got in touch anyway and apologised, and from that conversation, they were kind enough to loan me the model you've seen in this video. For absolute clarity though, they did not ask me to make a video, and this is not a sponsored piece. I flagged up my bias at the start of the video, but I assure you that's all it is, just me being a fanboy rather than me being directed to say anything. My opinions remain firmly my own. The reason I've brought this up is actually this particular video means a lot to me. To be able to work with my favourite brand in any kind of capacity is something I'm really proud of, and I see it as a really big milestone for the channel. None of this would be possible without your viewership, so I just want to take this moment to thank you all for your support of the channel. It sincerely means a lot to me. As a closing message on the Celeste itself, followers of the channel will know I've spent the last year trying to save up for a spring drive model. Perhaps the biggest compliment that I can pay to the Celeste is that I'm now seriously considering pushing that back to be able to buy one for myself. It's a simple, beautifully made, unique looking piece with a solid movement, Swiss made on the dial, and excellent finishing that I'd wholeheartedly recommend to anyone with a wrist on the smaller side. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this in future.